Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Ducksy Gaming and the next installment of my League Start testing guide, and this one is for the Toxic Rain Raider. For those new to the series, we're putting builds through their paces by challenging them to get as far as they can in SSF in 20 hours. So let's jump right in with the stats for this character at the end of play. So I played this character for 18 hours in total. It took about 5 hours 20 minutes to clear the campaign. We then went on to mapping. We collected 12 watchstones with an Atlas completion of 69. Now this is slightly worse than the previous builds on the channel, and there's a few reasons for that. Firstly, I didn't enjoy the build as much as the other one, so I just naturally wasn't as quick and enthusiastic about this build. You also need to spend a little bit of time gearing up, as the 4 link you finish the campaign on almost immediately needs replacing with a 5 link, so we do have to do a little bit of farming in this build. We did get all our lab trials done, so we obviously got to complete Uber Lab, so that adds a little bit of time into the mix. So we'll move on to the leveling gem links, and you want to start off with Caustic Arrow, Mirage Archer and Void Manipulation for your clearing skill, and then Puncture and, if you can, Chance to Bleed for single target. When you get to Mervar's Cavern, pick up Toxic Rain and then ditch Caustic Arrow for Toxic Rain. If you can, replace your Puncture setup with another Toxic Rain setup with Toxic Rain, Ballista Totem and Void Manipulation. And then when you get to a 4 link, you want to add Vicious Projectiles into both of your links if you can. Regarding support gems, look out for a casting damage taken setup with Immortal Call, keep them fairly low to prop them regularly, and then make use of Despair Curse on bosses. For auras, I run Vitality, Clarity and Skitterbots, then later on when I've got better mana, I then swap Skitterbots for Malevolence. Now during the first 5 acts, I also run Withering Step just to get an easy wither on bosses, and then once we get to Act 6, I ditch that and I pick up Spell Totem, Multi-Totem, Faster Casting and Wither. Now at this point, if you're going to use these totems, you're going to have to ditch your Toxic Rain totems, but really the damage sort of evens out. One of them boosts just your Toxic Rain damage, the other one sort of more evenly spreads damage out. I like to just concentrate on having one skill, so at this point I pick up Wither totems. And then for movement skill, while I'm leveling, I use Smoke Mine. And when I get to maps, I go Flame Dash and Second Wind. Now the POB will include links for your 5 and 6 link. It's also got an alternate Caustic Arrow setup. And it's got really what you want to aim for endgame gear, including Cluster Jewels. So let's talk about what this build is like to level with. So let's get it out of the way first. Leveling with Raider, no matter which way you go, is pretty horrible until you get your first lab. And it's the same for most skills, because it's even when you get your ascendancies, it's really a speed defensive orientated ascendancy. So until you get your first lab, the first 40 levels are pretty rough. As soon as you get that onslaught node and get any kind of movement speed on your boots, you then just get faster and faster and faster as you go along. So if you do find the first few acts sluggish, don't give up. You'll more than make up for it in the last few acts. And once you do pick up that speed, it is a lot of fun to play because you can just zoom through everything, clicking Toxic Rain in your flask. It really is just a 1-button build. And then on bosses, you just drop your Wither totems and curse the boss. So before we move on to gearing, we're just going to look at ascendancies and how you progress them. Now, it's really personal preference at some points, but realistically, your first ascendancy point has to be Rapid Assault. We get Onslaught constantly and we get 50% increased effect of Onslaught. As the name said, Rapid Assault, we just move and do everything quicker with this node. Now, when you get your second ascendancy, you're either going to go Avatar of the Chase for increased Onslaught effect, or Quartz Infusion for phase-in and chance to dodge attacks and spells. Now, I go Quartz Infusion only because I want to get Avatar of the Veil before my Uber Lab. Avatar of the Veil is the third one I take, and this is one that gives us Elemental Ailment immunity when we're phasing. And then for Uber Lab, we then pick up Avatar of the Chase to get even extra evade and extra onslaught effect. And then just to touch on flasks, what we're looking for really are defensive flasks. We're going full on, don't get hit, evade and dodge. So you want to use a Quartz Flask for more dodge chance, and then you want to use a Jade Flask for extra evasion. Then if you can get a third flask in, it's really up to you. You can go a Basalt Flask to minimize damage, or you can go for extra evasion. Other than that, you then just have your standard life flask and a Quicksilver Flask. And unless you've got mana on hit gear or your clarity refreshes your mana really, really quickly, you're going to need a mana flask through all of your leveling, preferably enduring. So let's talk about gearing when you're leveling and what to look out for. So we don't really get any damage from gear. It all comes from our gem levels. we don't scale the actual hit aspect of Toxic Rain, but the damage over time of the pods. So due to this, the damage on our weapon doesn't really do very much for us. We get the most DPS out of getting more attack speed, because more attack speed equals more pods on the ground. And due to this, there's only 4 bows I'd consider using. The starter bow that you get at level 1, short bow at level 5, grove bow at level 35, and thicket bow at level 56. They're the only bows I'll use that are non-unique. Regarding uniques, look out for obviously standard ones like Gold Rim, Wanderlust, Tabula. But one item that absolutely elevates this build is the Thieves' Torment Ring, because it solves one of the main issues of this build, which is life and mana sustain. With this ring, you basically don't have to worry about how fast you're attacking, because every time you hit an enemy, you're going to get a huge chunk of mana back. If you pair this with Quill Rain, it's an absolutely insane combination, but it can be a bit too much for some people because Quill Rain can take you to no mana in literally 0.1 seconds. So if you do pick up a Quill Rain, minimum you're going to want is an Enduring Mana Flask or a Thieves' Torment Ring. Do not try to use this bow if you just have a normal Mana Flask. Now I did pick up a Quill Rain and I tried it. I just feel that it wasn't really necessary. We get enough attack speed as it is. Our attack speed is insane. We don't need Quill Rain level of attack speed, and it does get hard to maintain the mana. That covers off the gear while you're leveling. Let's move on to look at what you do when you hit maps. So as said in the intro, the first thing you're going to notice when you hit maps is your falling is pretty lackluster. Yes, you'll do the content because this build's fairly tanky because of the dodge and the evasion, but it's not that much fun because it might take 20 seconds to kill a T1 map boss. So when we hit maps, our goal is to get a 5-link. And what we're looking for is a thicket bow with +2 to bow gems. So if you're in trade, you could probably buy this exact bow for literally next to nothing. Or if you've got a bit of currency, you could buy a 6-link short bow or the Porcupine Divination cards to make your own. Then you just throw a Screaming Essence of Dread on it and you've got a +2 6-link bow that's going to last you to red tier maps. Now if you're on SSF, or you don't have any currency and want to farm it yourself, the way I did it is I hit every harvest until I found the 5-link plant. I then picked up a 6-socket plant and stored them, so that's got what I need for my bow. I then went to find a thicket bow. They literally drop all over the place. You just might need to hold Alt to disable your loot filter because they'll most likely be hidden. And then I went essence farming, and I did eventually get the essences, but it did take a while because they're the purple ones, so they are rare. I use the essence on the bow, and that's my +2 bow, and that was comfortable in end yellow tier maps. Now if you're SSF and you are really struggling to find the essences, you could try alteration roll in the bow. The odds are 57 to 1 to get that prefix. However, I used 100 and I didn't get it. So if you think this might end up as an option, just make sure you're picking up every rare item you can and IDing it to get your alterations. If you trade league, do not use this method. You can just buy a +2 bow that isn't 5-link like a normal thicket bow for next to nothing. Now once you get to mapping and you start progressing, 2 flasks to look out for are Cinder Swallow Urn and Witchfire Brew. Cinder Swallow is the best mapping flask in the game. You get mana and life every time you kill someone. And then Witchfire Brew curses enemies around you so you don't have to worry about manually cursing. Now just that 5-link bow alone with your totem setup is going to be enough to get to high tier maps, possibly push into lower tier red maps. So we're now going to talk about progressing into red maps, and to me this was the main downside of the build. Even with the 6-link Toxic Rain slotted in my chest, Uber Lab completion and level 19 gems, I still didn't feel comfortable on red map bosses, unlike with all the other builds that we've tested. In red maps they have to be corrupted to get your bonus. If you get any sort of increased boss life, it's a horrible time. The clear is amazing all the way through. The clear is still really strong, but bossing is slow and mana can be an issue, and that's why I recommend a maximum level clarity. I didn't slot the clarity until later on, and in Conqueror fights when I started ramping up the tiers, I ran out of mana and they took a long time to finish off. Now although this sounds like a downside, there are different types of league starters. Some are made for boss killers and they're done to rush through the Atlas content and get to, Guardians, that sort of thing, and killing those in the first couple of days. And then you get other types of builds that are really made for farming maps, and that's what this is, and we'll come on to that. So this moves nicely on to the pros and cons. And pros is going to revolve around this we've talked about with the red map issue. On the flip side, it's an amazing yellow map farmer. We're talking sort of tier 8 to 10. it is so quick. You're like under 2 minutes, you're going to be done with the map. The bosses are fairly easy at this tier. You can use this build maybe to farm yellow maps for a couple of days. You will generate a ton of currency from, all of the master missions that you're doing, all of the harvest. You might be selling the crafts. Because we're doing tier 8+ maps, anything we get in harvest can be used on endgame item level 86 gear. It just makes a great league starter if you're someone that likes farming maps. And then the next plus point is the gear progression on this character is really, really easy and simple to understand. We just need a bow with plus gems, we need chaos.multi gear, and we need some cluster jewels. And ideally, we want minus mana cost to skills on our rings. But they're all really simple things to aim from. They're not particularly expensive either. I would think gearing this character out for end game is going to be less than 10 exalts. It's also really, really tanky. It may not seem like it because I didn't ever get above 5k life, but I didn't die and never felt like dying until I got to the tier 11+ maps and started running out of mana, and then I'm having to dodge every single attack. Obviously, I could have just, logged, gone back in, but as softcore, I didn't really care. So I didn't die at all until I got to about level 87 and started hitting the tier 11 maps. And then lastly, it's cheap and quick. It's cheap to get going and it maps efficiently and really, really quickly. Now, there are cons. We've touched on a couple already, but we'll just list them. As we say, it's not a boss killer without a lot of investment. It's slow to kill bosses. Yes, you might stay alive, but it's not particularly fun to have to take 2 minutes to kill a boss, for example. Another con is the first few hours are really tedious. I've really struggled to push through it. I knew it would be like it because I've leveled bow characters before. But I imagine a new player who maybe doesn't know where to path is going to give up on this build. So as long as you path properly, it's doable, but it's not fun. And it doesn't hit the ground running like other builds. As soon as you get into maps, you're already looking at needing to upgrade gear, which the other couple of builds that we covered on this channel haven't needed that. And then the last con for me, which for me is quite a big one, is sustain. We don't have any life sustain other than any life on hit that we might have and flasks. And we don't have any mana sustain other than our clarity, which obviously costs mana. Essentially, we're using nearly all of our mana because we don't have life and mana sustain. In conclusion, as a build to farm yellow maps on League Start, you can't go wrong. It's cheap, it's simple, it's easy, and it's going to get the job done. If, however, you want a League Start character that can just fly through the Atlas, there's definitely better builds to go for. In fact, I wouldn't go for this build. In SSF, I would definitely avoid it if that's what you're looking to do. In trade, you could, but you are going to end up needing to spend money on the character. Now, I hope this build guide helps. Links to the POBs and loot filters will be in the video description. If you've enjoyed the content, please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye.